All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Lazy Lab podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kuchera, and with me today, I have some very special guests, some friends of the show. You will notice we have Chaplain Timo. Is that Timo Fary? Timo Fary.
Timothy,
hey, I don't
you
know.
can say Timo.
Okay. All right. I could say Timo. I was thinking Timo, like Timo Werner from Chelsea, or if we're going to say like Timo, if we're thinking NHL season, they just had a draft not too long ago. So Timo.
They still play hockey professionally?
Oh, come on. Killing me right now. We also have with us the president of Lazy Lab Hunting Club, Matthew Mitchelson, and our esteemed guest today is Mike Priefer. I said that right. I know I said that right. Mike Priefer, special teams coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. That's we're gonna be very excited about it, and I'm gonna set my allegiances to the side because I know we're gonna have a great conversation today on the show. So, very very excited. I must tell you that this show is brought to you by Ubora Coffee Roasters, providing the caffeine for the hunts and all our other activities. Ubora Coffee Roasters, a veteran-owned coffee company, makes a very, very good bean. Bean water is very good. Matt Mitchelson's drinking some right now. But welcome to the show, everyone. And, I want to kick it off. I want to see, I think there's like a fishing event that's going on right now in Cleveland, in the Cleveland area, right? That was very successful. And Mitch, I know you got some information about that. But that was a great collaboration or partnership that we put together with our friends at the Cleveland Football Browns.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, buddy. Yesterday, it actually we kicked off that first iteration. Beautiful partnership between the Lazy Lab Hunting Club, the Cleveland Browns. A lot of help, obviously, with Midtown Fishing Charters, the best fishing charter out of Cleveland. Took 3 active duty Marines that are currently stationed at the Marine Corps recruiting station there in Cleveland. And then we had one of our liaisons. So a great shout out to Mr. Devin DeRogers for driving all the way down from Michigan to take part in that event. Lot to talk about. But the bottom line, Matt and Tim and Mike, was that this was exactly what we were hoping for. We had 3 very deserving, and here within the organization, as our viewers and listeners know, we call them heroes. We don't call them recipients. We don't call them, stakeholders or anything like that. Hey, these were 3 gentlemen that have been working their tail off through COVID, trying to bring new men and women into the Marine Corps, and they don't sleep. We talked about it last week, Matt, that recruiting duty is the most arduous duty, arguably, in the service, because you never sleep. You're always out and about. And so giving these 3 gentlemen a little bit of reprieve going out with Midtown Fishing Charters, I'm really excited. I can't wait for the next, we're doing 4 more iterations of this, 2 in September, 1 in October, and 1 in August. And the one in September, on September 11th, is going to be a tribute, obviously, to the 20-year anniversary of the attacks on 9/11. So, we can talk a lot more about that. But I want to say thank you so much right away to the Cleveland Browns, to Midtown Fishing Charters, in making this exactly what we're trying to provide reprieve for veterans and active duty folks. So, but more to follow. A lot more to follow.
And before we jump into all that, I do want to make sure that we hit the opening prayer here, but I just want to make sure that the audience knew there's an event going on as we speak on this show, which is very, very cool. But let's throw it over to Chaplain Timo Fary, and we'll get that thing going on. You're on mute. You're on mute, chaps.
Those were just the announcements before the opening prayer. If you would pray with me. Lord God in heaven, your word teaches us that you are perfect in your being, in your wisdom, in your power, in your holiness, in your goodness, in your truth. And Father God, we ask for your power as we seek to do good things, as we seek to serve our fellow man. We ask this in your most holy name. Amen.
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 Thank you, Timo. I'm gonna get it right by the end of the show. I'm just trying them on, like
I'll
pairs
take
of
that
shoes. I'm trying to figure out which one fits
I'll
best.
take that. Chaps is always so eloquent. When every time he comes on the show, his prayers are just so motivating, and it's almost inspiring to do better in my prayer life. I mean, does God want to talk to me, this, doggone punk kid from Oakland, or does he want to have a wonderful, articulate, eloquent conversation with Chaps? And it's like, man, you just do such a good job.
He only listens to me. Don't worry about it.
So, Mike, we have the three of us have talked quite a bit. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's start jumping into how you got to know Lazy Lab Hunting Club.
Yeah, for years now, when people ask me a little bit about myself, I like to introduce myself as a Christian father and husband, and that's been obviously who I am. A lot of people say, "Well, you're a football coach in the NFL. That's how you want to identify yourself." And I thank God every day for the opportunity to serve Him in the way that I do. And Matt and I have talked about this before, but I'm very blessed to do what I do. I take my job very seriously in terms of trying to influence young men in a positive way in the greatest team game ever invented, in my opinion. And I tell us that. People ask all the time, how do you affect some of these, young men or grown men? And I still think you can. If they're young and they're 20, 24 years of age, that area, you can kind of be like, now I'm almost 55, so I can be almost like their father. And then some of the older veterans, I can be an example of how to be a good husband, how to be a good father, because some of them are, newly married or young married couples with children. And so that's what I love about my job. And being a special teams coordinator, I get to coach everybody, the whole team. I like to joke around with Baker Mayfield. He's always asking to be on our hands team at the end of a game on the kickoff return unit. And of course, I'm not going to let that happen, because if he got hurt, I'd get in a lot of trouble. Might not be the special teams coordinator of the Browns anymore. I have a wife, Debbie. I have 4 children, Samantha, Michael, Wilson, and Katie. Wilson is going to graduate. Late graduation, Matt, Mitch, I told you that an earlier conversation. He's graduating 20th, and he'll be commissioned as second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. So real proud of all my children, and they do a great job. And my wife did a good job with them. I was either flying helicopters in the Navy, or I was coaching football. So obviously you got to marry a strong woman to be a Navy wife and now a coach's wife. So I think we all know she's going straight to heaven. So that's what I keep telling her.
So that's the base commander. That's what I always say about my wife.
That's right. That's exactly right. And then Mitch reached out to me back in Matt was I think January. You sent me a LinkedIn message, and I saw he was a Naval Academy grad, ex-football player, and what he was involved in. And my wife and I have been searching for ways to help our veterans, and that's done some little things over the years, and I just want to help out in any way that I can using the platform that I have. And I thought Mitch, Lazy Lab Hunting Club was a phenomenal organization, phenomenal ideas that they have to help our heroes, and so I wanted to get involved in any way that I could. And Mitch and I kind of collaborated and asked Jenner, that works with our community relations department. She did a great job of coming up with the idea of the fishing trips, and they're currently going on. So I think it's a wonderful thing that we're doing with this partnership, and I hope it continues for a long time.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, it's an amazing thing to be able to give back, or be in a position to give back, and the organization, obviously, it means a lot, right? You can speak to this, like the NFL carries sort of a global presence, and a lot of that has to do with our troops go overseas, and we still have the opportunity to see games. I know when I was living in Belgium, I had a whole bunch of guys who come over with their families and everything. We would have opening day, like that first Sunday of the season, and we had a bunch of big screens set up in the backyard and big inflatable thing. We would watch, we have a couple different of the Game Pass accounts for overseas watching, and we would be 3 a.m. We'd be out in my backyard, grilling meat and having a tailgate party, watching the opening weekend of the NFL. It's a really important part of what gives us normalcy, even when we're not stateside, and the NFL does a great job providing that. So the connection between service and the NFL teams that bring that. That's always a big deal to us. So it means a lot to Lazy Lab that the Cleveland Browns and yourself, you're able to give back to veterans, because they will connect to that, more powerfully, I think, with that brand recognition. Matt, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, buddy, I think you hit the nail right on the head. And I can honestly say, Mike and I, we talk very, very often about, faith, family, what this partnership means to the veterans and the active duty folks as we move forward. And I'll be quite frank, I hope this is something that we do annually. I hope it's not just a one and done sort of series. I hope this is something that we can continue to do, because it has obviously provided wonderful results as well. But I think you're right, buddy. I mean, when you look at different forms of outdoor therapy, and by all means, y'all, everybody, the viewers, the listeners, everyone who's associated with Lazy Lab, they know that I am very long-winded and I am very passionate about what we're doing. So, Matt, tell me to shut up at any time in this little rant that I'm going down. But I think that, with football, with the NFL, we all love, this is the American sport. This is something that means a lot. Arguably, Tim gave me a little. I saw that look on your face, buddy. Maybe it's baseball, but I believe that it's football. Football is the American pastime, and so when we were deployed, when I was living overseas, we wanted to see, like, NFL Europe games would come on the television, and we would sit down as a family, as a group, and we would watch that. So again, what we're doing, and we'll talk about this idea of work-based theology later on in the show as well. But, this partnership is just so incredibly important to our service members, to our veterans, to our active duty personnel. And also, let's never forget, as Mike alluded to, the families, the dependents, the spouses, they are part of what that outdoor therapy looks like. And so we at Lazy Lab Hunting Club, and I know this goes for the Cleveland Browns as well, we actively want to ensure that they are getting the sort of reprieve that they have absolutely earned, through their time. So I'll stop there, buddy.
Great. No, that is a good answer. Mike, I'm really excited to learn a little bit more about your background. So you flew helicopters for the Navy. What did you fly? What type of helicopter?
So I graduated from Annapolis in '89, which obviously, as Mitch knows, that was the best class ever. And then I went to flight school after that, and I ended up flying the SH-3 hotel, SH-3H Sea King, which they don't fly anymore. It was a pretty old aircraft when I flew it, and they certainly don't fly it anymore. But I loved it. We were anti-submarine warfare search and rescue platform. We started working with the SEALs towards the end of my career, and which obviously every fantastic, and I learned a lot about myself, about other people, about the Navy, about teamwork, camaraderie, all those great things that you learn in the military. And one of the things to mention, because I heard Mitch talking about how important it is, and you said it too, Matt, how important it is for the servicemen and women in the NFL and how they follow it. And it's a great reprieve. We're in the entertainment business. I mean, we all know that. But it's amazing how much the young men that we coach have an interest in the veterans, have an interest in all the services. And they'll ask me questions once they get to know me and a little bit my background. I don't talk about it a lot, but when I do talk about it, it's, and I kind of pick and choose my spots. It's amazing how much they get out of it. And they have so much respect for the men and women that serve and the veterans that have served. And it's a really partnership. It's a good relationship. And that every time they're around service members, and I know before the pandemic hit, obviously we would have people here. When I was with the Vikings, we would have people out all the time. Army, Navy, Marine Corps, anybody, maybe not the Air Force, but everybody else. I'm kidding. But we'd bring them out, and our players, they ate it up. They had so much respect for what these people did for a living.
It's awesome. I think it's amazing. First of all,
I've got to jab the air whenever I can.
Mike, I feel like we are we're like best. We should be best friends. Like if you watch Step Brothers, right? And Will Ferrell and the other guy, the curly headed guy. They are, they have some things that they can't see eye to eye on, and it's, so you're with the Browns. I grew up in Pittsburgh. You grew up in Cleveland, right? It is, there's a gap there. And now you're picking on the Air Force. I served in the Air Force, so it's, we're having moments here. We're having moments. And I feel like by the end of this thing, we're going to want to go do karate in the basement. So, so this is what's cool about this is like, when they ask you about like your service and everything, and I've talked to other players before, people around professional sports through podcasting, and a lot of times they say, it's the fact that we're really, they get idolized a lot. Like the players, they get idolized a lot, and they get put on this pedestal by society, because of their position, their platform. It's talked about all the time, right? That you have this platform as being an NFL athlete. And a lot of times they feel, I don't know if it's like a sense of guilt or shame or something, because they recognize that you have first responders, you have military folks, you have teachers, you have people that are providing a service to the country in order to provide things like safety and education and health and well-being. And they feel fortunate and blessed to be able to play a game for a living and make a very good living doing so, when you have others that are willing to sacrifice their life for the well-being and safety of others. So I definitely, it just rings true, I guess is what I'm trying to say, to hear you say that they're asking you about your service and they're very interested in helping out veterans and everything. We see that in return. So I guess to the audience, right, that is definitely a theme that happens in professional sports. And we see that as military members, that gets paid forward to us a lot of times in the way that they interact and the amount of respect and love that they have for us, which is furthered when we see things like this fishing charter series that's going on, the first inaugural one this weekend. What's been the conversation around that fishing trip? And feel free to chime in, anyone here. I understand it's been very, we lost Mike. It's been very successful and fun. We're going to roll the punches and we'll get Mike back on here in a second. But Mitch, what have you heard about the trip? I know it's been a good time.
Yeah, buddy, to answer that question, I received some incredible feedback, not just from our liaison, Mr. Devin DeRosiers, but feedback from the Marines themselves. In fact, if you go on Instagram, a few of them have already posted, their thanks to Lazy Lab Hunting Club, their thanks to the Cleveland Browns and Midtown Fishing Charters. For those of you who are familiar with fishing on Lake Erie, arguably Lake Erie is a very, I don't want to say dangerous, but with high winds, it's a shallow lake. Right. So if you get high winds coming across the lake, it can be a rough going out there on the lake, but the rewards are so incredible. The walleye fishing, the trout fishing that you can get from there. So anyways, to get back to your question, Matt, the feedback coming from the Marines themselves, from our perspective, I can't really speak to the Cleveland Brown perspective if there's been feedback that's already come across the table, but from the Lazy Lab perspective, from the feedback from the Marines and Midtown Fishing Charter, it was an incredible time. They got to get out there early in the morning. They were amongst their brothers, the camaraderie, the fellowship, the excitement of hauling in a big catch. It was just positive. And, and Tim, I'm going to look at you to talk about this as well and your experiences, but Tim knows what it's like to see heroes have this sort of this reprieve, this elation, when it comes to being part of a hunting and fishing trip, being around not necessarily like-minded, but having similar experiences in your career, whether it be combat deployed or being a recruiter, just coming together, being part of something fun, and just getting away from the hustle and bustle of life. It meant the world to him, Matt. I mean, bottom line, the feedback was so positive. So, all good things. All good things.
That's amazing. Yeah, what a what an amazing thing. It was one of the things that like drew me to Lazy Lab, right? Is the fact that we can provide that kind of relief, we can provide that kind of experience to folks, um, just by putting them on a boat and letting them throw a few lines in the water. You know, it's a really simple thing, but it's super powerful, and it brings people together.
And Matt, I'm sorry if I may, buddy. I don't mean to cut you off, but the other thing that's so powerful about these hunting and fishing trips, and I'm using what we've started now there in Cleveland on Lake Erie as an example here, but it's not just the service members that are touched, right? Again, I alluded to the dependents, the spouses, the family. When they see that their service member, their hero, is having a good time and their hero is happy and energetic, well, it's contagious, right?
Yeah.
It blends over to the family, and the family gets happy, and they're full of life and full of energy. And so those are the relationships that we're cultivating. Again, that idea of, hey, love God, love people, and it just, like I said, it's contagious. So.
No, it's awesome. It's an amazing thing. I've seen it. I've witnessed it at events with my own eyes. It's very, very cool to see the power of fellowship and the outdoors and what that can do as far as healing, the steps that you can take in doing that. Mike, question for you. Did you grow up hunting, fishing, anything like that?
No, not hunting, but we would fish at just local lakes or ponds or whatever, either in Ohio, or I lived in North Carolina for a bit, and then moving around with my son, who's going to be commissioned in the Marine Corps. He loves to fish, so we lived in Kansas, and we had a couple ponds, and we used to go there every chance we get. So it's kind of a cool thing with your youngest son. My youngest daughter, the one who graduated from the University of Tennessee, we went to a lake house down in Georgia. We were fishing off the dock, and this summer she becomes a fisherman. She was hauling in a lot more fish than I was, so she's been bragging to me for the past month about how many fish she caught.
No.
And I did not catch. But typically it was because I was putting the worm on her hook and I was taking the fish off her hook. And she'd throw the line in and catch another one because I didn't have time, but because she was doing such a great job. But she didn't want to touch the worm or the fish. So I think that put me at a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's slowing you down. Yeah, it's slowing you down. You can't get enough lines in the water for yourself, when you're doing all the heavy lifting over there. No, it's very cool. Very cool
I love
stuff.
fishing on. I've fished on Lake Erie before, and Lake Erie, like Mitch said, the walleye is incredible, and so I've done that. We had a chance to do that a couple years ago with my youngest son. We took a charter out on Lake Erie, and it's a great place. I tell everybody Cleveland's God's country anyway. So if you're from here, you believe me. If you're not, believe me.
How big's a walleye getting on Lake Erie? How big are we talking as far as a fish is concerned?
Well, if I was fishing, it would probably pretty small, probably too small to eat. I guess I really don't know the exact size, Matt, but I do know that if my sons catch them, they're right big enough to eat. We could bring them home and clean them up and fry them up. So walleye's pretty good. Nice.
So, Mike, let's switch gears here a little bit. You've coached at a lot of places. I'm going to get to the question of why coaching in a second, but I noticed in your bio that you coached at VMI, the Virginia Military Institute. Fun fact,
I sure did.
And this is where we get this.
1999.
Broke up a little bit there. 1999, I think is what you said.
1999.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So, fun fact, my dad went to VMI in the early 80s, wrestling and played football there as well. So very, very cool. That's our connection. That's where we started. That's the bridge we're building here. You and me, Mike. And that's how we get to karate in the basement right there.
It's a Step Brothers connection. That's right.
That's it. That's our samurai sword signed by Randy Jackson. Yes. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There
100%. Awesome. So why, how did you get into coaching, and why, like, what about coaching speaks to you?
So my father was a coach. He coached at the high school level, the collegiate level, the pro level. And when I was a younger kid hanging out, watching him coach in high school and then in college, and even the NFL was when I was still in high school, I saw the impact he had on young people. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I loved football. I was not blessed. I was small and slow. So looking back now at a coach, and I was very small and very slow. I wasn't probably the coach's dream, as you can imagine. But I did love the game. I do love the game, and I saw the effect that good coaches like my father had on young people, and that really kind of drew me to, like I said earlier, when I identify myself as a Christian father, husband, and then I like to teach, consider myself a teacher. I teach young men football. I try to set an example for them. I try to live my life so one day they can say, hey, you know what, this is what would Coach Priefer do type thing situation, and try to help them and then guide them, because it's amazing the backgrounds that some of these young men have and what they've overcome in their lives. It's incredible. And they inspire me every day to be a better coach, to work harder, to stay in the office longer, to make sure that they're prepared for practice for a game or whatever the case may be, so they can stay in this league as long as they possibly can. And, I love it. And I love the way they respond. I've got older players that'll text me or call me on Father's Day and just say, hey, happy Father's Day, Coach. Hope you and your family are well. Or they'll just call me, hey, Coach Brief, I wanted to let you know that my wife and I had a baby, I've been coaching maybe 5-10 years, but they'll reach out and just tell me where they are in life. And that means the world to me. And I know, I wish more guys would do that. Maybe I didn't reach as many as I wanted to, but if you reach 3 or 4 here, 3 or 4 there, then hopefully you're doing God's work. And I really believe that's, what I'm on this earth to do right now.
That's a great answer, and obviously huge benefit to see the impact in another person through your teaching is something it's special and you can carry with you, which is why being a father is so important to people. It's such an important job. Matt, I'm not sure if this bridges into what you wanted to talk about, right? As far as like that the work-based theology piece of this, right? That I think is important for us to go into as far as the topic is concerned.
No, I agree with you, Matt. And I think Mike, again, hit the nail on the head. What he is describing is truly servant leadership, right? He's talking about, yes, being a good coach, but more than that, how are you becoming a great mentor? How are you, and these men are, between, like Mike said, 22 to 38 or however old they are. The ages, there's a wide range of ages there. But as a coach, you can still inspire and mentor and serve those players. And that's what he's doing, right? It ties in very well with the idea of work-based theology, because I think we can all agree that faith without works is dead. And Tim, you can speak a little more to this. I know we can talk a little bit about Abraham and his relationship with Isaac, his son, and how he inspired Isaac through servant leadership as well, how he served his family. And I think that what Coach is doing falls right in line with that. And it falls in line with what is at the heart of Lazy Lab Hunting Club. So Chaps, I guess I would ask for you to chime in here and talk about work-based theology from a biblical standpoint, maybe talk a little bit about Abraham and his relationship with Isaac. So I pass the baton over to you, brother.
He's hitting the Cliff's Notes again. Let me unmute him. There you go. Go ahead.
The first place that you're going to go when you start talking about works-based theology is James's little epistle. And there's a funny anecdote. Martin Luther, in the beginning of the Reformation, Martin Luther wanted it not only removed, that book removed from the Bible, from the canon. He wanted it destroyed because this particular passage I'm going to talk about is just flew all over him. And so when we talk about works-based theology, the thing that's important to point out is that we're not talking about works-based salvation. And I don't, when the the traditional Christian hears works-based theology, they get twitchy and they don't, they're like, no, it's all faith. But James in his epistle wrote, but some will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I'll show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one, you do well. Even the demons believe that and shudder. But you want to be shown, you foolish person, that faith apart from works is useless. Was not Abraham, our father, justified by works when he offered up his son Isaac on the altar? You see that faith was active along with his works, and faith was completed by his work. And so, I've heard the criticism of modern preaching that it's a lot like a farmer who keeps plants or keeps young trees for his orchard in his basement and doesn't water them. So they don't get sunlight and they don't get water, and they're kept in very shallow pots. And once a week he goes down on Sunday and yells at them to produce fruit. That's just not going to work. And faith and works are inextricably intertwined. And so, we demonstrate our faith, and it's not a matter of we're proving our faith by our works. It's a matter of the natural progression of having faith is that those works are going to come. They are going to be that it's going to affect your life. If you have saving faith in the Savior, it is going to change you. It's going to change your behavior.
I'm on mute. So we're getting the thumbs up from from Mitchelson over there.
Yeah,
and, I thought we'd leave Timo just hanging for a second. No, but
Matt,
that was awesome. Go ahead.
I could have kept preaching.
Oh, and I love that. Chaps, I got to tell you, so the viewers and listeners, they know that I got the opportunity to attend seminary, Bethel Seminary as well. And during that time, I reached out to Chaps many a time to get his perspective on, as we're talking about servant leadership and works-based theology. Having a mentor like Chaps is absolutely phenomenal. So, brother, thank you very much for your words and talking about, this idea of servant leadership and how we are instilling that and how that's the driving force within Lazy Lab Hunting Club. And then going back over to Mike, that's exactly what Mike is showing with the Cleveland Browns and his players. He is cultivating, he is watering their faith, he is watering their progression in life, not just to be, incredible football players, which is important, don't get me wrong, but more importantly, in my opinion, is that he's showing them how to be good men, how to be good fathers, how to be good sons and servants of society. So I tip my hat to you, Mike, as well. So.
Yeah, it's a very important
Thanks,
role. It's a super important role to be able to take. I'm interested just from the novice podcaster view, right? A lot of folks probably look at NFL football players and they think, wow, what are these guys like? They just come out of the box like ready to go. They're immensely physically talented. And when you see them in interviews and stuff, they typically have the right answer in their back pocket ready to come out. But at the end of the day, like one of the things that keeps sticking out to me that keeps getting brought up is that they are young. I mean, they are, you're talking about, you're taking a kid out of college, 21, 22 years old, away from whatever they're familiar with. This is their first real big responsible type job. Like before this, they didn't have a job in the NCAA, right? In college, their job was to play football. They didn't have a job in high school, most likely, because they were probably working out. Or if they did have a job, it wasn't an NFL job where they're getting paid millions of dollars, right? So there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of spotlight on them. And there's someone needs to pick up the bill for like mentoring them and continuing to mentor them on how to be good citizens, how to be good men. By the way, you also have this tremendous amount of celebrity that you've been given through your physical abilities, that people are going to expect you to act outside of what is probably expected from a 22-year-old, right? They're going to want you to carry yourself with the poise of a leader, of someone who's 30 years old, versus, carry yourself as a 22-year-old that just got out of college. It seems unfair, but at the same time, there's a parallel there with the military and what we ask our 22-year-olds to do. Because you think if you joined the military at 18, by the time you're 22, you're 4 years in, most branches of service, you're now an NCO, you're a frontline supervisor and leading other men and women into situations where life is at risk, and so we're asking them to do the same thing, sans the celebrity aspect of it. So there is a guidance and a servant leadership aspect to this that needs to take place. I'm just curious as to what that perspective is and how receptive are the talented folks that come into the NFL in your arena versus the folks that would come through in the military, having worn both hats.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Matt. What we call young men that come in that are prepared for the NFL, that do the right things, they prepare well, they study, they work hard in practice, they perform well, they're great with the media, they're great with the fans. We call those guys true pros. That's kind of our term. He's a pro. He's a true pro. And I would probably use that term with those young NCOs who have like you said, 4 or 5 years their belt. Now they're thrust in that very important leadership position that they're leading those young men and women that are below them. And if they're true pros, in other words, they handle whatever difficulties, whatever adversity that arises, which is inevitable, obviously, in the military. And if they handle that with grace and class and how they've been trained by their mentors to handle those situations, I think you would qualify them and probably call them true pros. I mean, they're good at what they do. They have great ability to be a servant leader. They know how to handle certain situations because they've seen their mentors handle those situations. At least the good ones do. And I think that's it's a huge quality that, I'll use our first round draft pick from Northwestern as an example, Greg Newsome. Greg is 20 years old. He junior, he had 2 years left of eligibility. He only played 3 years, and he was redshirt. I think he was redshirt a year, whatever the case may be. But he's 20 years old, and you look at him, he looks like he's 15. You watch him move around, you're like, okay, I know why he's a first round draft pick, but he's a smart, engaged, got a great personality. He knows how to work. He understands how to listen. He doesn't have all the answers. He asks good questions. He follows the veterans' leadership and the role that they play. But he is, I would consider him at a very young age a true pro. He knows how to handle those situations, and he'll only get better because he's so young. And I think you have a lot of those same type of people in the military. I know when I was a young junior officer, I had a chief pay. I was in the line division, Mitch, and I had 50 really young enlisted guys and department, and that's a hard job, and they don't get paid very well, as everybody knows. And I basically told the chief, I said, it's your division, and I am here as my role as a division officer to help you do your job at a high level. And I think that's the way to do it. And he looked at me and he said, sir, I've been in the Navy, I think maybe 20, 22 years at that time. And I've never had a junior officer tell me that. I said, well, to me, that's the only way to do it. And, I'll take the heat, but I'm going to give you the ability to do your job at a high level. And we worked really well together for the year that we were together. And I learned from that relationship and what a great job he did. And I learned how to be a better officer. And I took that into the coaching profession as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, no,
I don't know if I answered your question, Matt, but I tried.
No, for sure. No, totally answer the question. I think it's great. The servant leadership aspect of that is something that we talk about a lot. It is, I can brag on the Air Force a little bit when they teach us about, sort of what it means to be a leader. That servant leadership part is a big aspect of that. And they talk about, the derivative of the word sergeant means to serve, and to serve others is a very big deal in our philosophy on how to lead, which is why I think you see, men and women make that transition from the military into civilian life and continue to find leadership roles in other organizations, is because you learn to put people first. What you were doing when you were a junior officer is you were putting people first. You knew at that time it probably wasn't the best idea for you to call all the shots when you have a guy that has 20 or 22 years of experience doing that same job. Like, that's the person that you want to put in charge. You want to empower them and you want to let them be successful and get out of their way a little bit. That's exactly what the military does with junior officers, is pairs them with those really old hats that know the ropes. They know how to do things and they can show you where to go. And it's a junior officer's ability to prove that they're a true pro by letting that senior NCO lead, letting them be the person that kind of shows them the ropes. And it's the same thing. It's the first round draft pick, maybe getting advice from someone who was, undrafted free agent at one point in their career, never had the amount of celebrity and the amount of spotlight on them as far as a player is concerned, but they've been in the NFL, plying their trade for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and they have more knowledge on how to play at that level, at that speed. And so the true pro first round draft pick is going to link up with them and let them show them the way, like, teach me everything you know, and be a sponge, right?
Yep.
So
That's a great analogy. Yep. I think that's what you get. You get the guys that have been in the pros for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. So those are the guys that are, and the good ones I've been around are the servant leaders. They're the ones that are going to help those young guys. And that's hard sometimes when you're doing that with your same position, because as you know, those young guys are trying to take your job sometimes. And I think if you just set the example as a true pro, that we keep using that term, it makes them, and they're just better men. They're just better mentors, better people in the long run.
Yeah, we talk about you can say next man up. You can talk about, being the team player, like whatever it takes to fill in for what the team needs. But that's, at the end of the day, it does all come down to service and being that servant leader, which I think ties greatly into what we were talking about. That work-based theology piece of it is huge, and connecting, showing your faith through your work and through what your personal product is a very powerful way to prove to folks that you can be a good person, that you can be a good Christian, and you can also go get the job done. And it sends the right message, and it provides an example for others to follow. I see Mitchelson shaking his head.
That's a great point. And yeah. No, I'm sorry. If I'm talking too much, Matt Mitchelson, let me know. No, but I think one of the things I think is cool about any leadership job, leadership position, is that you can learn so much from the young people that you lead. I learn every day from these young guys that I'm coaching, and I like to pick their brains about not only ideas, techniques, and fundamentals, but how to better run a meeting, how better to communicate, how better to do things on game day. And I want to let them know that I'm not too proud to not take advice from a guy that's much younger than me, around the game as long as me, because honestly, they're the ones playing. I don't get to go between the white lines. I say, they're the ones out there playing. So whatever I can do to change, reinvent myself, be more creative, do those things become, and I think that's part of being a great leader too. And I know Mitch knows this as an officer, that you have to be creative in order to be a great leader.
You got to be receptive as a communicator as well, right? You have your communication skills play a huge part there in setting aside your positional authority or positional rank in the organization that you're in. To be able to take that feedback and advice from anyone up and down that ladder is huge, right? And it becomes this idea sharing thing. When I was going through grad school, Toyota does this. They're like famous for doing this for process improvement, where there's no idea is a bad idea. And so they take all the feedback that they can. Anyone at any position in the company can provide feedback on any process within the company, and it's taken seriously. And they assign small teams, like blitz teams, to these ideas, and they'll get hundreds of thousands of feedbacks. I mean, they have that's the culture they've created on feedback of process improvement. So they'll get hundreds of thousands a year. And from a percentage perspective, it's probably quite low on how many changes they actually make, but they've cultivated this culture of everyone's bought into the point where they're willing to provide feedback to help everyone else be more efficient, more productive within the company, which, as a leader, like being able to cultivate that within your own organization is a huge plus. Mitch, chime in. I know you've come off mute and on mute a couple times.
I'm sorry, gents. I love this conversation about process improvement. Obviously, being in the Navy, we harp on process improvement all the time. And you're right. Toyota does a great job, as well as Hyundai. They do a great job with what is it called? TACON improvement or something like that.
It's called a Kaizen event.
Kaizen event. Yeah, there you go. So I should know that. And I'm slapping my hand that I don't know that actual verbiage. But no, you're right. Process improvement is huge. And going back to the idea of servant leadership, though, I think it comes down to humility. You can be that JO responsible for 30, 35 people, whoever that may be, but you have to recognize that there are individuals that have the experience, right? And so this is why you pair a JO with your senior enlisted. One of my favorite chiefs when I was a JO, this was my first officer gig. As an enlisted man, I had some JOs that I really respected, really appreciated learning from. And then when I became an officer, one gentleman in particular, he ended up being a senior chief before he retired, but his name was Jose Castillo. So, hey, Chief, if you're watching this, you gave me a lot of great education, and I appreciate it. But the thing that was wonderful is that I had the opportunity to take a step back and see how he led sailors in the Navy. And that helped me build my own leadership. So again, it all goes down to humility, right? Humble yourself in order to learn, in order to serve people better, more effectively, more efficiently. There are three gentlemen that on this topic of servant leadership that are just phenomenal subject matter experts, so to speak. The very first one is Mr. Clint Bruce. And I know, Mike, you're familiar with Clint. You and I have spoken about him many a time, but Clint takes faith and applies that to servant leadership, right? The other two gentlemen are, and Tim, I look at you for this, buddy. The Army, in my opinion, does leadership and leadership training better than any service out there. And the two gentlemen in particular that I'm thinking of are retired Lieutenant Colonel James Bogle, who's currently at USC teaching leadership in the MBV program, as well as Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCulloch, who is down in Florida. Both of these gentlemen, the way they describe leadership in this, not a passive tone, but in this idea, this sense of humility, this learning. You're always learning. You're taking feedback, process improvement. All this education helps you become a better servant leader. And I think, Mike, you're doing that. You're doing that when you're listening to these players, whether they be young or old, or new coaches that come in, or older coaches that are your senior. You're taking all this information in order for you to become that better servant leader. Anyways, I love this conversation. I'll go on mute.
Great conversation. It's very, very good. I wrote those names down, by the way, so I want to make note of that and go check them out. What's the? I got a good question. I wanted to ask Mike some questions on coaching. Right, best coach, best coaching advice he ever got.
When I was a younger coach, it's hard for younger coaches sometimes to separate and not cross that line of being a buddy with the players. And that's mainly the younger coaches. And when I was a younger coach, I was a little bit older than some younger coaches because I had my time in the Navy. But I had a coach, an older coach, tell me, you can be their friend, but you can't be their peer. You can be there for them. You know what I mean? They knock on your door, they come in, hey, coach, I got a problem with this, I got a problem with that. But you don't want to hear about what they did last Saturday night. You know what I mean? In that type of thing. And I thought that was tremendous advice. And any of the young coaches that, if they want to listen to me on this staff, and I've said it to young coaches before, I said, be there for them. You're allowed to be their friend, I think, but you don't want to cross that line to be their peer, because then, and it's just like any other leader, subordinate type of relationship. You never want to cross that line, because then you become a less effective leader, in my opinion. I thought that was great advice I received many years ago.
That's an excellent answer. It's amazing the parallels you draw, right? Like when you become that next rank and you get into a new group, like a new tier, you want to separate yourself. Like you could still be their friend, but you can't be their peer is probably a very eloquent, simple way to say it that sums it up, right? Best coach you ever worked for?
Can he answer that?
A lot.
Matt?
I've worked for some great.
That's a loaded question, though.
It's not
right?
It's not loaded. It's like who's his mentor? You know, like
who's your mentor? Oh, okay.
You know, like everyone's got a coach that was their mentor. You know, it's.
Well, if he doesn't,
Mike, if I'm gonna get you in hot water here.
No, he can ask that.
And which of your children is the favorite?
No.
With kids, it's all the same. They're all equal.
Say that again, Chaplain. I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
No, I said, and which of your children is the favorite? Yeah. And which of your kids is the favorite?
Oh, yeah. No,
yeah.
Yeah,
right.
I can't answer that one.
Don't go there.
No, I can't answer that question. I've worked for some tremendous head coaches. The two top ones that I learned the most from were Tom Coughlin and Jim Tressel. And I learned from Leslie Frazier. I've learned from some other. Every coach has different, qualities about them that I kind of took from them. One of the pieces of advice I got at the Naval Academy when I was a young midshipman is one of my upper class said, "Hey, one of the things I think the Naval Academies do as well is that they do a great job of saying, okay, be around these other older midshipmen that are trying to be good leaders. They're still young, but they're going to make mistakes, but you don't want to be that person, but you want to take certain qualities from different leaders and apply them to what you can do and what your strengths are." And I thought that was great advice. And I got advice about as a coach as well. So I've drawn, and I've actually, for every coach, whether they're a coach I wouldn't want to work for again or a guy that I would love to work for again, I think at the end of the day, you can learn from each one of them, the good and the bad. And I've tried to apply that, not to become Jim Tressel, not to become Tom Coughlin, not to become Kevin Stefanski, who I work for now, but take the qualities from each one of those men and learn from them and help make myself a better football coach, a better mentor, a better teacher, a better person.
Great answer. Yeah. So that's a great answer. Those amazing coaches, by the way, that you learn from. Holy smokes. Most talented player that you've ever coached. That's a fair question. Chappy's looking at me
usually
again.
The most talented ones on the roster are the guy. They're not playing special teams if they're the most talented guy on the roster, unfortunately. But I will tell you this: the returner I had in Minnesota, and you'll know who it is Cordero Patterson. Cordero Patterson was big and strong and fast and fearless. And in order to be a great returner, you have to have a certain element of either you're crazy or you're extremely fearless. And I think Cordero had a little bit of both in him. And I love coaching that kid. In fact, Chaplain, he went to, I think maybe about 7 months. He went to the University of Tennessee. It was his one year deal. He went to a couple different schools, and great kid, great personality, bubbly, really immature when he first got the NFL, and he's grown up, and I think he's going into his 9th or 10th year now. So I'm really proud of him, and I believe he's got the NFL record for most kickoff returns in a career, and he had 5 of them for us in Minnesota when I was there the time we were together, and I really enjoyed coaching him because he was a difference maker. He wasn't a Devin Hester difference maker who was a dual returner. Cordero just played kickoff returner, but he played gunner. He did some receiver, obviously, and but he was probably the most talented athlete I've ever coached.
Smartest player you ever coached? Or if you don't want to answer that one, we could always go with best leader you ever coached.
Oh, wow. I've coached some really smart players. I've been very, very fortunate. One of the young men that I coached in Minnesota for many years, he was end up starting safety. He was a special teams demon. And about to say his name was Andrew Deho. I think he's retired or he's not with the team right now. But I think he played about 10 years. He was with us in Cleveland last year. I was with him for 7, 8 years in Minnesota. But at the beginning of every training camp, I'd say, Andrew, I sure hope you get beat out this year on defense. Because if he's starting on defense, he wasn't playing everything for me on special teams. So that was kind of our standard joke together. He's like, come on, coach, you're going to jinx me. I'm like, well, I hope you get beat out again because I need you on special teams. That dude was smart. Special teams was important to him. He ran our punt team like a champ. Always got us in the right calls. But he's the one that pops into mind. I've coached a lot of smart guys, and one of my favorite players that I ever coached was an undersized linebacker out of Valdosta State, college free agent. We saw off a YouTube video back at the lockout year in 2011. Larry Dean was his name. He's one of the young men that contacts me on. He's playing up in Canada. He played for maybe 3 years in the NFL, and he wasn't an NFL linebacker, but he was a great special teamer and one of my favorite people I ever coached. And to this day, he's still playing in Canada. So making money and coaching, playing football and having a blast. So, I've got such a blessed life. I mean, I flew helicopters in the Navy. Now I'm coaching the NFL. I mean, come on, who wouldn't be thankful for what I've had the opportunity to do in my life?
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Favorite coaching moment?
Well, sorry, Matt. When we played the Steelers this past year in the playoffs, it happened to be on January 10th of this year. If you want to get specific, our head coach, Kevin Stefanski, was hit with COVID. We lost several players, several other coaches, and I was the interim head coach or acting head coach for that game. And my wife and my children, all 4 of my kids and my wife, were at that game. And there was like 3,000 people in the stands in Pittsburgh and Heinz Field, and we beat the Steelers in a playoff game. And I was the acting head coach, so that's a pretty good coaching moment right there.
Yeah, that would be a good moment. My so my dad passed away in 2019, and he's as a hardcore Steeler fan, going back generations. We had 2020. We had a cardboard cutout of him at that game, which was really cool. And I remember all the stuff that went into that. I remember all the media lead up to it. One of the themes of this show, the servant leadership and the humility aspect of this. And I'm thinking now, like, man, if we were just a little more humble, if we were just, if we just focused and buckled down and focused on our locker room and focused on our playbook and execution and everything, who knows what happens. But I know that when we lined up again, though, as a fan watching, it was really evident. It was obvious watching the game that we were up against a team, like we were up against a group of guys that were hungry and had something to prove and were coming after us with everything they had. Because you guys just took the game to the Steelers from the kickoff, and it was my hat's off to you. It's a heck of a coaching moment for sure. And one to hang your hat on. It's definitely a very, very proud moment, something you can look back on with a lot of happiness. It was really impressive to see. I'll tell you that. We're used to as Steeler fans, like that's not something we are used to, as we talked about, before we kicked off the show, right?
No, I can understand that. Yeah.
So what advice do you have for younger coaches?
The younger coaches that I have a lot of respect for, and my oldest son, Michael's a coach. He's a Division II linebacker coach, special teams coordinator up at Northwood University. He just took the job. He's been a GA for 3 years, and the advice that it's not all about you have to have relationship with your players. You have to be a leader. The X's and O's part of it and all the techniques and fundamentals that go into this great game of ours, you have to learn those. You have to work at it. You have to study, and that will allow you to have a better relationship with your players. Because I'll be honest with you, these players won't listen to you for very long if they don't think you know what the heck you're talking about. And I think that a lot of young people just come in and they want to be, hey, buddy, and go out there and they try to go out there and be their peer, like we said earlier. It just doesn't work. And so the advice I give my son, and I think he's a tremendous coach, and he's a Michael, and he's a junior. He calls himself 2.0 because he's the upgrade. So you understand what I'm dealing with my son now. So he's the he also said, good coaching genes skip a generation. So Papa was a great coach, and it's the coaching genes skip me, and now he's a great coach. So he's got some sarcasm going, which really helps.
Holy smokes!
I think he got that from my wife, of course. But in all honesty, I think a young coach would need to work your tail off behind the scenes, and then really, and this is kind of corny, but it is true. These players don't know, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I know we've all said that, but it's so important. And it's important to know what you're talking about, but it's important, especially in this day and age, have these young men understand that you really do care about them as people and as football players, and you're trying to help them in any way that you can.
Yeah, it establishes trust, and through that trust, you gain credibility and their attention, right? So it's, that's 100%. Corny as it sounds, it's not corny at all because it's sage advice for sure. Last question, and then we'll kind of wrap on the show as we're approaching time. Obviously, NFL, football Sundays, that kind of thing, right? And from a faith-based perspective, what advice do you have, or how do you execute spiritually when the day and probably your weekend is consumed with football activity? How do you capitalize on your faith and being able to recognize the Lord's Day at the same time?
Well, I think all of us are busy. All of us have things to do. People say, "Oh, you're so busy." Well, everybody's busy. I mean, the stay-at-home moms are probably busier than all of us. I saw what my wife did for so many years with our 4 children. So I think everybody's busy, but everybody has the ability to find some time for the Lord. And what I like to do is start off my day, reading a devotional. It might take 5 minutes. I read the devotional. It's a Bible passage, a devotional. It's some thoughts, say a prayer, and say, okay, Lord, on the weekends, I'm Roman Catholic, so I go to Catholic Mass on Saturday evenings. Our team provides a Mass or chapel service for coaches and players on Saturday evening, the night before a game. And I think it's a really good way for me and for others to, okay, this is what life is really all about. Tomorrow we're going to go do our job, and we're going to do it at a high level. And, you pray, you don't pray. I never pray to win. Most people don't pray to win. You pray for safety. You pray for our players coming out healthy. You pray to do the best that you can with the opportunity that you've been given. And then you just go coach the next morning. And, I wake up early in the morning, even on game day, wake up in the morning, I go down and watch about another hour's worth of tape. I go through my game plan, go through my calls. And, that's how I spend my Sunday morning before I go to the stadium. So whether it's home or away, Sunday is the Lord's Day. Is that often pops into my head? I believe I'm doing the Lord's work, and I think that's really helps me. I don't know if I'm trying to make an excuse for working on a Sunday, but to me, that's a lot of people work on Sundays now, and it's not like it was in biblical times. And I truly believe that, like I said earlier in the broadcast, that or earlier in the podcast, that I'm doing the Lord's work, and I think I got to learn and get better every day. And those 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, at the start of the day or at Mass or whatever, those really help me prepare to be a better servant leader, to be a better father, to be a better husband.
That's a great answer. And by no means are you doing anything wrong by coaching on Sundays. Just it's excellent advice. And it's really nice to see, that the NFL provides that venue for its players and coaches to be able to recognize and, practice their faith, in whatever way they need to. It just pinged a thought into my head. I didn't grow up in a very religious household. And so one of my very first introductions to faith was through football, believe it or not. And I had a football coach that would lead us in prayer before every practice and every game. And that was just, thinking about it now, I mean, it's stuck with me for a long time. Is just like, it kind of goes hand in hand, so to speak, before you go and participate in some sort of athletic endeavor, that carried over into like before I went into a job interview, before I, started my day, when I end my day. It just kind of set the tone. Like before I do things, it's important to remind myself what I'm doing them for and who I'm doing them to glorify. Right. So that's, I thought that was very cool. And it kind of triggered that thought in my head. I'll open the floor to anyone to chime in.
That's great, Matt.
Go ahead. Yep.
No, I was just going to say that we say the Lord's Prayer. Our head coach leads us in the Lord's Prayer that before the game, and then after the game, the young man that coached our corners, Brandon Lynch, he's both his parents are ministers, and so he's got some great. I mean, Chaplain had a great prayer to start the podcast today, and Brandon does a phenomenal job with a post-game prayer, and the players go crazy after a win. Especially after a win, we're not so happy, but after a loss, but after a win, when Brandon gets those prayers, and he gets after it pretty good, and it's not real long, but it's eloquent and it's well thought out, and I love to hear it. So we start and end each game with a prayer as well. So I think that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know we're operating off a little bit of a delay on some of the feeds here from a video side, but I really want to appreciate and thank everyone for being on the show. I'm going to open it up just like one minute here. Anyone that has any last minute hits that they want to throw out there, otherwise we can wrap the show up.
I would
Go
like
ahead,
to
Chaps.
say, I would like to say, the scriptures teach us that we are all called. We each have a calling. Just as a chaplain, I'm no different than the auto mechanic. We are each called to do our thing. And with your calling, I think it's an amazing opportunity that you have. And it's interesting to me, I coached a little bit while I was in grad school, just, soccer, but the guys I coached in soccer and the men that I was the chaplain for in combat, I would argue that those two groups of people are the people that I have the same type of relationship with. For years and years, whether or not we're still stationed together, whether or not they got out or I got out, they're still calling me up. They're still, hitting me up through social media. Hey, coach. Hey, chaplain. That relationship is so much the same. And I just want to express my gratitude for the influence that you have, because I know how strong that is. I know the lifelong bonds you are building and the work you are doing for Christ's kingdom in the lives of these young men. And so I would just like to say thank you.
That means a lot. Thank you, Chaplain. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mitch.
Man.
You're up.
Man. So everybody here knows how emotional I get, when we have the conversation about faith, servant leadership, talking about football. Everyone here knows how much, football means to our family, the Mitchelson family. This has been an incredible conversation, guys, for not just our viewers and listeners, for me personally. This is everything I had hoped for within this conversation. And I just want to say thank you, for Mike, thank you for joining us. This isn't the end of our conversations at all. I know I'll probably be talking to you sometime next week about life, and other things. For Chaps, thank you so much for joining us, buddy. This is, it's always a pleasure getting to hear your words of wisdom. I truly appreciate it. And Matt, thank you so much for facilitating, this conversation. This is, Clint Bruce will tell you, and I know I've spoken about him a little earlier in the show. Every time I'm around Clint, I get emotional because we talk about football and faith and how that servant leadership ties into both of those topics. And this show has just meant a lot to me. This has probably been my favorite conversation that we've had thus far, Matt. So thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna have to keep that on the down low, so we don't want to step on the toes of past guests.
That's
in case they want to
true.
come back.
That's true. That's true. This is why I'm only on the show every so often. So
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. It's in the same vein as the who's the best coach you ever worked under. It's the same kind of thing. Who's the best podcast you've done so far?
Yeah. Which of your kids is the favorite, right?
Yeah. You want to know these things. These are important. Your kids want to know the answer. Everyone,
Sure.
Everyone in my family, we always goof my mom and tell her, like, we all know that the third child is your favorite child, 3rd out of 4. That's not me, by the way. So I'm the oldest. So it's it's okay. I'm okay with it. It's fine. It's whatever.
I actually apologized to my sons
I
once.
feel your pain on that one. I feel your pain. Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Chaps?
I actually apologized to my sons once and told them that their sister would be the favorite and just deal with it.
They all have to be the same. Otherwise, they're going to compete to be better than the other, but they all got to be the same. That's just how it's got to be. Chaps, go ahead and if you don't mind, if you close us in prayer, and then I'll sign us off.
All right. Receive the blessing of our Lord Christ. Now may our Lord bless you. May he keep you. May he make his face to smile upon you and give you his peace, which surpasses understanding, both now and forevermore. Amen. Brothers, go in peace.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for a great show. Thank you for your great conversation and insights. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Aurora Coffee Roasters for supporting the podcast, for being there for not just our hunts, but all the activities that go on with Lazy Lab. We really appreciate you as well. Until next time, thank you so much. Stay safe and God bless.